costume videos, recycled cryptid clips, and misidentified wildlife. Most footage like this disappears in a day. This one didn't. And that is exactly why a team went looking for answers in the Colorado woods. So a small field team was assembled to travel to Colorado and examine the location directly. The kind of setting where large wildlife can move unseen, and where stories survive because they are difficult to disprove. By the time the team crossed into the region, the scenery had changed completely. The air was colder, pine cover thickened, roads narrowed. The mountains cast long shadows, even in daylight. From a distance, the landscape looked cinematic. From up close, it looked like exactly the sort of place where scale, silence, and distance could distort perception in dangerous ways. And that is the tension at the heart of every serious Bigfoot investigation. The environment can both reveal and deceive. When the team arrived near the target area, the mood remained controlled. Gear was unloaded with routine efficiency. Packs were balanced. Camera batteries were checked again. Thermal units were tested. The crew reviewed the route one last time before moving in on foot. At this point, there was still a perfectly reasonable expectation that the entire trip might end with an ordinary conclusion. A visual misunderstanding, bear sign, human traces, nothing more. That possibility remained on the table. But the deeper they moved under the tree line, the less abstract the location became. The forest changed the acoustics first. Sounds carried unevenly. Wind moved high in the canopy, but not always at ground level. Footsteps landed softly in some places and sharply in others. Visibility narrowed fast. A few yards off the trail, brush and timber created enough cover to hide large movement almost instantly. It was the kind of terrain where a camera can be pointed in the right direction and still miss the only moment that matters. The team advanced carefully, comparing the landscape to the known visual cues from the viral clip. Slope angle, tree spacing, vegetation density, openings near the rail line. The documentary record at this stage was procedural, even technical. But beneath the method was a growing awareness that the location matched the unsettling character of the video better than anyone would have preferred. By late afternoon, they selected a clearing to establish camp. This was not done for drama. It was practical. Overnight observation would allow for controlled audio recording, thermal scanning, and morning track assessment in the exact zone connected to the sighting. Tents were set. Equipment was staged. Light discipline was maintained. Food was secured. The perimeter was noted. Then, daylight began to drop. A pause. In forest investigations, night changes more than visibility. It changes judgment. Distances feel shorter and less reliable. Ordinary sounds become harder to place. The mind begins trying to complete patterns before evidence arrives. That is why experienced teams rely on routine after dark. Procedure helps limit imagination. At first, the night around camp produced what would be expected in any wilderness zone. Wind through branches, movement in brush, the occasional crack of settling wood. But later, the sound pattern became less easy to classify. Heavier movement. A pause.
Where is that coming from?
Then another sound from a different
It's not
direction.
wind.
Then what the hell is it?
Then a lower call, rough and brief, unlike anything the team could confidently identify in the moment. Lights swept outward. Thermal scans followed. Nothing stayed in view. This is where real investigations become psychologically difficult. Not when something appears clearly, but when the environment begins generating signals that remain just below certainty. One strange sound can be ignored. A sequence of them changes the atmosphere completely. What would get your attention first out there? A shape in the dark, or the silence that falls right before it? Comment below. Morning brought the first physical signs. Near camp, the team found a series of large impressions in damp ground. They were not perfect prints, and nobody treated them as definitive, but they were notable enough to document immediately. Depth, spacing, direction, soil condition, and surrounding disturbance were all recorded before the area was contaminated by foot traffic. Close by, broken branches added a second layer of interest. Fresh breaks, twisted damage, some higher than expected. On their own, such details mean very little. Forests are full of damaged wood. But in context, after the night's sounds, and in the same zone as the viral sighting, they became part of a larger pattern worth following. So the team moved deeper. This was the point where the investigation stopped feeling like a follow-up to a video and started feeling like active field pressure. The forest thickened. Light became fragmented under the canopy. Fallen timber forced detours. Visibility shrank. The biologist tracked sign. The survival specialist monitored route and pace. The camera operator stayed ready, knowing that in cases like this, anything important is likely to happen too fast and too far away. Then it did. A dark movement crossed between trees ahead. Brief, fast, not enough for confirmation. More than enough to halt the group. The camera turned, but the forest did what forests do best. It concealed the source before the frame could resolve it. What remained was not proof, but reaction. Immediate stillness, heightened attention, the unmistakable shift that comes when multiple people realize they may have seen the same thing at once. From there, the tone of the expedition changed. Reports from the field suggested the group began sensing movement around them more often than seeing it. Sounds from behind, small disturbances to the side, intermittent silence where wildlife noise should have continued. In another setting, each of those details might mean nothing. In sequence, in a remote forest already tied to a sighting, they became harder to dismiss. Then something landed nearby from the woods, not falling from above, thrown. That single event sharpened every interpretation. If another person was present, where were the additional signs? If it was chance, the timing was remarkable. If it was deliberate, then the team was no longer simply studying the environment. The environment, or something in it, was responding. And with that, the second night approached. Back at camp, preparation became tighter, quieter, more defensive.
Really think this is a good fucking idea?
Recording devices were repositioned. Thermal units were checked repeatedly. Light placement was adjusted.
Did you hear that?
No one needed to overstate the reason. By now, the pattern was clear enough to affect behavior. Once dark settled in, the next stage began. Footsteps. Slow at first. Heavy enough to suggest size. Deliberate enough to suggest control. They moved around the camp perimeter in irregular arcs, never fully exposing a source, never staying long in one place. A few seconds from one side, then silence, then movement from another angle. At one point, One of the tents was shaken, then again, with more force. The response was immediate. Lights up, voices out, thermal scans across the tree line. Still nothing definite. That may be the most difficult aspect of cases like this, to communicate honestly. Nearness without visibility. Pressure without proof. The feeling that distance itself is being managed by whatever remains out. That morning, the team made the only reasonable decision. They were leaving. Camp came down fast. Cases were sealed. Tents collapsed. Essential gear was moved first. The route out should have felt familiar, but under stress, even known ground changes character. Trees look tighter. Sound feels closer. Time compresses. Then movement was heard behind them again. Heavier this time. Faster. What followed was no longer an open-ended search. It was a retreat under pressure. The camera record from this stage became unstable, as most real footage does when people are moving fast through uneven terrain. Breath, branches,
Did you see that?
partial frames, sudden turns. And in the middle of that chaos, one brief image. A large, dark figure between the trees, upright for an instant before dropping out of sight. That image did not settle the case. It ensured the case would remain unsettled. Back outside the forest, the team reviewed everything. Audio, visual fragments, environmental notes, track documentation, branch damage, timing, terrain mapping. The result was exactly the kind of outcome that keeps Bigfoot cases alive. There was no definitive proof. There was also no fully satisfying, ordinary explanation that resolved every part of the sequence. Skeptics could still challenge the interpretation.
That wasn't normal.
Believers could argue the pattern was too consistent to dismiss. And investigators were left where the most credible mysteries usually end, with a body of evidence that is incomplete, suggestive, and difficult to ignore. So why did this Colorado case stand out when so many other Bigfoot videos do not? Because it did what most viral footage fails to do. It held up just enough under scrutiny to justify fieldwork. It came from terrain consistent with long-standing reports. It produced contextual evidence on location. And it generated multiple layers of unresolved activity rather than a single ambiguous image. That does not make it proof. It makes it serious. And maybe that is the most honest way to frame stories like this. Not as certainty, not as fantasy, but as investigations into events that remain resistant to easy closure. If you've watched this far, I want your take. Was this a chain of ordinary wilderness events, amplified by isolation and expectation? A misidentified animal event that grew larger with each retelling? Or one more entry in the long archive of encounters that keep Bigfoot in the space between folklore and field research? Leave your theory in the comments. And if you want more grounded investigations into cases like this, subscribe and stay with us. Because in the world of unexplained footage, the most important question is never just what was seen. It is why, out of thousands of claims, this one was worth following, all the way into the Colorado woods.